set up, second tables, things like that. So there's a meeting this Wednesday. You can also, I think, Diane, I'll offer you up that people can contact you as well. But bottom line, we're looking for people to help with the event as COPE members for COPE's component of the fundraising. And then if anybody is interested or wants to do more, we have a need for that too. So thank you.
Great, thanks. Any other announcements from anyone? Anything exciting going on in your communities that you want to share? All righty. I think that you all are aware, but just in case you aren't, we did get another FACNet grant this year. There are two components to that. One is working with our vulnerable aging population. So we'll be working with the Council on Aging. Thank you so much, Marianne McBride, our glorious vice chair of our board. We will be reaching some of our homebound folks through their Meals on Wheels program. And then our second piece is to work with our Latinx community and work with training some folks from those organizations, helping them reach and do preparedness work in their communities. So we're very excited to be able to do some of this work that we haven't been able to do because it hasn't been funded. And now we're hoping to partner with some other organizations that will help us have a broader reach and do things in a culturally and language appropriate way. So we're excited to have that funding capability. As you all know, we are on the search for an executive director. That information about that job is on our website. It's a pop-up on our website, and please help us get the word out. It's been really challenging for us to find the right fit, and we really need the help. So if you could please network in your communities and let people know about the availability of this position, it would be of great help. Arlene? Oh, I thought you were, yeah. Nope, okay, cool. All righty, any other, yes, Mr. Abercrombie?
Sorry, I'm always slow when you open announcements. Just mentioned that on Fitch Mountain, broom and other invasive species eradication is a kind of a constant challenge and thrill. Healdsburg has, the city of Healdsburg has reinstated their contract with land pads. So we are doing broom pulls actually at a rapid pace, almost bi-weekly on Fitch Mountain. The weather's beautiful. The mountain is beautiful right now. Things are, starting to bloom and come up. And of course, part of that is different shades of broom. So there was a broom pull last Friday. There's one coming up on April 7th. There's another on April 19th. Just check the Land Paths website if you are interested in getting out on Fitch Mountain. If you haven't been out here in a while, it's beautiful. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we're hoping that at some point we will be having a broadcast burn here on the mountain as well. Date to be announced. All right. So at this point, what I'd like to do to open up the discussion, we have Jennifer Roberts here from the Resilient Landscapes Coalition. We're so excited to have her here. What I'd like to do is Pat and I are embarking on a big project here at the house of doing both defensible space work and home hardening. And this is heart-centered work. This is like, if you're going to do this work, you need to walk the talk. And so it's been really challenging. I will be honest with you, and I'm going to share with you some slides about the house and the befores and afters and the progress and that kind of thing, just very briefly. I only just have a few slides. And I'm going to focus on the defensible space work that we're doing. Again, this work is just starting, so you're not going to see the beautiful end part. You're just going to see what it was before and where we are now, which is not pretty. But I want you to see that. I want you to see the process and what that's all about. So just give me a second here and I'll share my screen. And all right. And let me go to there. Can you see okay? We're good? Is it good, bub? Okay. So our goal is to get IBHS certification. And I'll let you know the challenges of that in just a minute, but this is our house this is what our house used to look like. Big rose garden in the front. We didn't plant it ourselves, but moved into the house. Part of the reason, because this beautiful rose garden in the front with lots of irises and other bulbs that had been planted. Just so you know, we're on Fitch Mountain. We're right on the road. There's not a lot of space in the front of the house. So that's just a picture from a while ago. This is why we are doing this work, why we feel like this transition to a defensible space is so important, right? Just as a reminder, I hope this isn't triggering for people. That wasn't my intention. It was more of, I have to remember to myself, why do we need to do this work? Because this is our history. We have some space from it. It's been a few years, but it's very real. We live in a very high risk fire area, and we need to do the work to try to protect our home. Again, the front of the house, tall rose bushes in the summer. We used to have wooden furniture on our little tiny patio in the front. You can see the car parked there in the front, not more than 30 feet away from the house. That's just the reality of where we live. This is what it looks like now. So the garden is completely gone because that's within 5 feet of the house. We also have noticed that hedge out front that used to have a wooden fence in front of it. So we took that out. And so we're in the process of putting hardscape here in the front. And the cool part for us is that we're going to now have livable space in front of our house. So we will probably end up putting a nice set of metal table and chairs out front, and probably put some nice ceramic pots with some rose bushes in them or something else. Probably not roses because we had deer like crazy, as you can imagine. But we will have a very livable, nice space in the front. Oh, and you'll also notice that there was a metal chair in the front there. So we're transitioning. I took these pictures when we were in the Midwest because this is what their houses look like. And it really reminded me that it's an aesthetic in California to have shrubbery and vegetation right next to the house. I was really surprised to see this and reminded, because I grew up in the Midwest, that this is the aesthetic there for a lot of people. So I just wanted to bring that up. This is the challenging part. We live in redwood trees on Fitch Mountain, and we love our trees. Our trees actually all have names. And, because we love our Douglas fir, his name is Doug. And we have this picture on the left. That's Lucy, the redhead, right? And then the other tree on the right-hand side. Who is that? That's Helen. Yep. So anyway, and you can see, so IBHS does not want trees over the house. So we would need to cut these trees down or substantially cut branches that are over the house. And I love this picture too, because it shows you why they want you to do that. See all that debris on the roof. all of that debris coming down from all of these trees is constant. And we're, Pat is up on the roof constantly cleaning that off, or we're getting help from somebody to help us do that. I also wanted to show you the front. Those of you that know us well know that we're totally into our camping van. Well, we don't have any place to park our camping van besides near our house, which is in the 30-foot zone, which is not a good, good for fire hazard. So I just want to bring that up and just, let you know, these are the personal challenges that we have in trying to comply with IBHS. And so for us, it will be a process over time. Our neighbors allow us to park our van in their property most of the time. So that's one solution that we have. But we have to work on this stuff. The other picture on the right-hand side is the side of the house. Now, we used to have a storage thing right next to the house there in that, what is probably 2 feet from the house, leaning up against the house. One of those tough sheddy kind plastic sheds that we used to store actually our weed wrenches and other things for the community in there. We had to move that away. And these steps were put in just a couple of years ago. They're railroad ties. They're soaked in creosote. They shouldn't be in the 5-foot zone next to our house. So another project that we need to anticipate taking care of. And I'm going to stop there because I will talk about home hardening if we have time at the end, but I really want to hear from Jennifer. And I think it's a great segue because Jennifer's going to have some ideas for me for making my defensible space really beautiful. So I'm looking forward to hearing what she's got to say. I hope that was helpful.
Well, thank you.
Go for it, Jennifer.
Thank you. All right, hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'm going to share screen so then I won't be able to see you all, but thanks for being here today. So I'm Jennifer Roberts, and I'm a member of the Resilient Landscapes Coalition. And we are a collection of a bunch of local nonprofits or organizations. We're all Sonoma County based. And this partnership works to educate the general public about fire safety or resiliency within our landscapes. So we are a collaboration between Fire Safe Sonoma, the Habitat Corridor Project. There we go. No? Stay. Okay. The Habitat Corridor Project, the Sonoma Ecology Center, and the UC Master Gardener Program of Sonoma County. And I actually wear a couple hats within this group. I'm a presenter and curriculum developer, and also I do social media and a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, both for the Habitat Corridor Project and the Master Gardeners. And you might see a lot of familiar names on this list. So this presentation was created by April Owens, the executive director of the Habitat Corridor Project. And she was originally slated to give this presentation, but couldn't be here today. So I'm filling in. So the mission of the Habitat Corridor Project is to create and promote California native restoration gardens in the urban environment. So when I say resilient landscapes, what do I mean? So a resilient landscape is fire-wise, it conserves water, and it's biodiverse. And one great way to get inspiration for this type of landscape is to look around you, take a hike, go out into our wildlands and paths and look at how Mother Nature designs. So when we say a resilient landscape is fire-wise, we mean that it uses defensible space principles. So it's sensitive to the zones and the techniques that we have learned over time that help keep our landscapes safer from fire. When we say these landscapes conserve water, we mean that it helps keep water on site and it promotes drought tolerance. And for biodiversity, we are using California native plants. So one thing we are definitely not promoting is what we call the moonscape here on the left. So we saw a lot of this type of landscape go in as a direct response to the fires that have happened and also the drought. There's many reasons, but we hopefully show the public that there is a way to have something in between this moonscape and this overgrown garden style on the right. So we want to make this a beautiful landscape that also has a lot of things that other things that we're trying to promote. So I'm curious from you guys, if you already have knowledge of why we promote using California native plants. So if you guys want to throw a couple ideas in the chat. Any ideas why California natives are our choice? Yeah, aligning with nature is always the best choice. Yes. Drought tolerance, promoting habitat for insects and other critters. They grow well in our climate and they're adapted to our ecosystem. And habitat, yes, for native wildlife. Excellent. So I can see we have a lot of knowledge in the room. And yes, so some of those things that you hit are exactly the reason why we promote natives. They're adapted to where we are, they're adapted to our water cycle, adapted to our soils, and they support our native fauna, including pollinators, and they're quite beautiful. And native plants also can provide a bunch of other, what we call ecosystem services. So these are benefits to our landscapes, our gardens, including enriching the soil, cooling our homes with shade, sequestering carbon, which is a really hot topic and an exciting thing right now, that research is being done to see how we can actually take excessive carbon from the atmosphere and draw it down into our soils where it can stay trapped. So it's not contributing and perpetuating climate change. So this is an exciting field. They help manage stormwater. They're adapted to our rain cycles so they can help absorb, prevent erosion. They hold soil in place, provide cover for many of our different critters, support pollinators, and clean the water and air. So I like to take a look at this graphic because it shows the wildland urban interface. This is something I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with. And how we deal with defensible space and how we plan our gardens changes depending on which type of area we live in. So everyone is living in a different area is dealing with slightly different maybe constraints or benefits. But I'm assuming most of you all are living in this more rural area that's butting up against our natural wildlands. And so that's a benefit. It's beautiful, but of course it brings with it some of the fire risks that we might not see in other areas. But we've also been shown that to be not true in certain situations in recent years as fires become more intense. So this is just to demonstrate that depending where we live, we have different risk assessments that we need to be aware of. But I like to look at this as potential for all of the places we've seen greenery that is put in by man. We can help shift it to being more more California natives, and less of these outside invasive plants or interlopers. So just a little brief bit about defensible space, just so we're all on the same page. I know there's a lot of knowledge in the room, but when we talk about defensible space, I'm talking about the 3 different zones. So the non-combustible zone being 0 to 5 feet from the house, which Priscilla was talking about, and what I hear that you guys are focusing on. And then going further out from the house, or structures of any kind, including fencing and outbuildings, we call the intermediate zone, 5 feet to 30 feet out. And then the last zone, the extended zone, which is 30 feet to 100 feet out from structures. And then our group, the Resilient Landscapes Coalition, is now working on even developing curriculum to help homeowners with defensible space that's beyond the 100 feet. So look out for that. Well, we'll have workshops coming up on that too. But for today, I'm just focusing on the 0 to 100. So this first zone, also called zone 0, is really the critical component of structural defense. And that's because of the nature of how fire works. When there's embers blowing around, they tend to get stuck in these corners of a house, under eaves, or even can make their way into open vents, or if there's decking, they can get stuck under decks. So we see a lot of combustion happening to a structure because of embers. So we want to start focusing, of course, with home hardening. That's always number 1. I'm glad you guys are talking about that as well. But then we want to move out into that 0 to 5 foot zone and start changing how we look at that zone. So for our recommendations for defensible space, for zone 0, we recommend having no plants and nothing that could be combustible. You see here, a lot of rock, gravel. There are a couple of well-established trees right near the structure, but that it can be a different conversation, and I will mention that later. But if we're coming in with like small plants, or we have a bunch of small plants, just like Priscilla showed us, consider removing them or not putting in new plantings. Then for zone 1, the 5 to 30 feet, we recommend having islands of plants. So this is contained spaces, as you can also see in this graphic, that are separated by non-combustible materials. They can be pathways, they could be patios, they could be just non-usable areas of the garden, but keeping our plantings contained in a space. And then zone 2, 30 to 100 feet, we can move into larger islands of plants, have more shrubs, and maybe even larger trees as we move outward from structures. So more about the zone 0. So here are a couple of good examples, or of what we say is good 0 to 5 design. So we recommend having patios and pathways that use decorative rock. And you have so many choices when looking at different kinds of decorative rock. And we also really like to bring in boulders with our designs and using rock walls, often from found rocks on site. We really love to use materials that are already on site before bringing in more material. Also, the 0 to 5 could have water features. And you can get away with some containers, depending, of course, on the type of material the container is made out of, that could have annuals or maybe some non-native plants, if you like. I will always have tulips, because that's my thing. So, you know, of course, we go by the best by these guidelines, but we also can bring in some of those things that bring us joy. So here's another photo of good 0 to 5 space. So we have a base rock all around the structure, and then we put decorative rock over it. And some places the path is definitely 5 feet. Some places it's a little smaller. It's being encroached by these plantings. But then you can see that we don't start the plantings until 5 feet away, and they are in a mass of planting. Here's another example. This home had this existing patio, and we took out all the plantings that were along the house. And especially you want to be sure you're not having plantings directly under windows. So if you are going to come in with containers and such, don't put them under windows. But instead, we actually created the entertainment space, making it larger for this client so they can have extra tables, extra seating. And then you can see further away from the home, the island of plantings start. Here's another view of that, bringing in rock close to the home. Containers are still there. Seating area. The barbecue is there. But what we always say and promote is that these materials, if they are combustible, should be moved away from the home on red flag days. And then, of course, in the event of any evacuation. But best not to have them if possible. And then you move away and you see the beautiful plantings that I think this style is better because when you're in the home, you're looking out on your landscape, you can better see the flowering plants. You're not looking straight down. And this client even wanted to add a few vegetables to their design. So instead of having them get lost in this native planting, they put some, like there's some soil with edging, and then they just planted their veggies. They kind of go out into the rock. So they're easily accessible and they don't get lost in the rest of it, but they can still have vegetables. And then one other choice you could make for the 0 to 5 is using this grass. This is a native grass. It's called no-mow bench grass. And when it's kept well hydrated, it is something we could choose to put closer to structures. But the key is it has to be well maintained and well hydrated. So you can mow this down pretty low, or you can let it grow and it has this fluffy look and it kind of falls over. So it can have a kempt look or not. And then of course we have a fire break with a wall before we get into a combustible mulch with plantings. So the 0 to 5 could also have water features, and we want to have water in our garden. It's an important component of having a resilient garden that's built for pollinators because they need water. So for bees, birds, and butterflies, we recommend a water source. And you can use any kind of decorative rock. With our clients, we actually go to the rock yard and pick out their boulder with them, something that speaks to them. And then we help them drill or put in a filter. So it is a safe, circulating system. And then they can watch the pollinators come and visit. And then we surround these with some kind of permeable hardscape. And then containers I mentioned can be okay in the 0 to 5. Okay, so moving on from 0 to 5, now going to 5 to 30. This is where we can have islands of plants. But the key is we want to keep them well hydrated and well maintained. And we also choose to use a lot of low growing plant material. So not a lot of tall shrubbery, but below 4 feet. And we also like to use ground covers for this area. And of course, bringing in stone walls and boulders for accents and for fire break. We choose to use shrubs, more of a specimen. So we might have a larger or taller shrub, but it's definitely, there's one of them. And it's a feature in the garden with lower material surrounding it. And of course, very important, these pathways that we use for separation. So pathways that are used by you or by animals or are just there as a break. Here's another drawing of those islands of plants. And the recommendation for in the 5 to 30-foot zone is we use smaller islands that are only 3 feet by 10 feet approximately. So we keep it smaller in that first part of the landscape, and they can be larger as we move away. So here are some examples of ground covers in the 5 to 30-foot zone. These are all native. These are some common plants you might know. Coyote brush in its larger form, but there is a beautiful ground cover form. So that's the wonderful things about so many of our natives. They have so many species. There's so much variety to choose from. So just some other ideas. Woolly sunflower, buckwheats are great, and we have so many salvias to consider. So also flowering perennials in the 5 to 30-foot zone are lovely to use. And I call these two out specifically because one thing we have gotten feedback from clients as we've done more and more of these gardens using more of these hardscapes like a lot of stone and rock, they really absorb the heat. So in the middle of summer, especially up on our ridge lines, I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of heat and some of the natives don't do as well. Or we're seeing them die back earlier in the season than they should. So I just wanted to call out these two plants because they do really well with that heat. So the Verbena de la Mina, this one here, and Epilobium canum or California fuchsia. That's it far away, that's it close. They do better being along these rock areas. So biodiversity, I mentioned, is a very important thing in these gardens. And so we use a lot of flowering plants to promote all the pollinators coming to visit. And here's a whole list of some of our favorites and some pictured. So manzanita, of course, very popular native, and there's so many varieties available to us, and they produce these beautiful flowers, and they're one of the first things to come into bloom in late January, early February, depending where you are in the county. So they're a great addition to the garden when we're still in the rain cycle and feeling down, and we can see this beautiful flowering plant. And I will make this PowerPoint available. So if you don't feel like you have to frantically write down any of these names, I'll get it to you. So I mentioned the islands, but what about some suggestions for between these islands of plants? So we say rock, gravel, or crushed rock, which in recent years, there have been so many more kinds of beautiful rock being made. So we're lucky. There's a lot to choose from. And pathways and hardscape. So any kind of concrete that you're pouring or bringing in any flagstone, that will increase the cost of your project. So that's why we love using these pretty gravels and mixing and matching. But it is really nice to have like one defined pathway and putting some money into that experience. And then also you can use, as I mentioned before, a native grass, the bent grass, or we have another one called red fescue that when planted together can grow into each other and gives that turf look. So here is an example of a project that we did in a smaller landscape, because I don't want people to feel discouraged that they have to have like all this space that they're working with in order to create a beautiful garden that is still following defensible space guidelines. Not at all. So here's a pretty typical, American house that has some kind of hedge that's being shaped to be a certain way, and a lawn and an entryway out of concrete, etc. So not a lot of space, but what you can do is we added a patio of concrete. So now there's more room for the client to entertain. So don't be shy of entertaining, not just in your backyard, but maybe in your front. or especially in this situation where it's a quiet cul-de-sac, so not a lot of traffic going by. And then we came in and filled the area with native plants. And here's them filling in. So now you can sit here, enjoy your meal, and watch pollinators come by. And you've really increased your area where you can enjoy the outside. And instead of just having a lawn, which isn't feeding a lot of our native flora or fauna, we are now creating a beautiful space. Okay, so design in the 30-foot zone to the 100-foot zone. So here's where we get the opportunity to have larger islands with taller shrubs, and we can create more habitat. This is an area where we would add a lot more bunch grasses, especially the taller kind. And it is recommended to have at least 4 feet of spacing between these islands. So you do still want to make sure that they are separated. And for these islands, they can be bigger, like I said, 15 feet by 6 feet is an approximate measurement that we give that it can be tolerated this further away space from structures. And these islands can have any kind of shape. They can be, wiggly or a kidney shape or anything, whatever fits your design aesthetic. Here's another example. Looking back up at the house. So the house has good 0 to 5. And then we have a rock wall for a fire break. And then we have a bigger planting island, another rock wall. And then further down out of the picture is another planting island. So this is a fun, design to do because we're working with slope as well. So fire behaves differently on a slope. So you have to be mindful of creating appropriate islands that are well protected by non-combustible material. One other thing that resilient landscapes do is conserve water. So we're always looking for ways to keep water on the site. This helps keep the landscape, the plants themselves, well hydrated, but it also helps recharge the groundwater. When we have these huge rain events, water is just flowing off of the landscape, down a driveway, down the street. It's not being absorbed if it's moving quickly. So we create depressions and elevations to help keep water on site when it falls. And we can make them look very decorative or even natural. So here's an example of that project before, but here's it planted up. And it can start to appear a natural stream. So our goal with water is always to slow down its movement, spread it out, and let it sink. Rain gardens are another great way to do this, or a small pond on your property. So you're letting water sink in slowly and recharge your landscape. Okay, another way to conserve water is to use a native grass, like I've mentioned, and not your typical lawn grasses. They demand so much water. And in fact, the regulations in California for how much water different cities can use, they're set on a lawn because they are the thing that uses the most water in the landscape. So we are so lucky we have alternatives that can look nice and lush. All right, and then speaking of how to keep them lush, how do we hydrate our plants? Well, we want to do it in the right way, of course. So the most common ways we do that is with drip or with some kind of sprinkler or overhead watering. So for drip, you can, if you're redoing a whole new landscape, you could install what we call a grid of drip. So the drip line's going up and down in like these swaths through the landscape, and then we'll plant and then come through and put emitters that go to specific plants. Or you can use that spaghetti line that's like really pliable to circle a plant. So to make sure that it's getting 2 or 3 drips of water per plant. So it really depends on what kind of plant you're planting and the time of year that this garden's going in, etc. But a big part with hydrating our plants is maintenance. Emitters need to be moved as the plant grows. So never think of irrigation as being one and done. It is something that you have to keep revisiting. So this is a theoretical example. If you plant a garden in spring, for year one, for native plants, they would need 1 gallon per plant twice a week for the first 2 months of their lives. Then moving into 1.5 gallons per week. And then until the rains start falling. So through the summer, you could give them 1.5 gallons a week. And then in year 2, far less. You only have to water twice a month, and that's 2 gallons per plant. So native plants are, they were established with our dry summers and wet winters, so they like to get more water less frequently. The other alternative is using a sprinkler system or overhead watering. And we have had a lot of success with these Hunter MP rotators. These are a very high efficiency sprinkler, and they can, your old sprinkler heads can be popped out and these can be popped in very easily. So that's a huge advantage, and they're more efficient. Oh, that little plant, that little photo got out of the way. But so for resilient landscapes, also we use natives, right? We say, and we are promoting biodiversity. But what does that mean? Like, what's the definition of that? And we say that it's 80% California natives. And then you could use 20% other favorite pollinator plants, because there are fabulous plants that are non-native, but also attract pollinators, or other annuals in containers, or other favorites you may have that are not native. So 80-20. Here's just an example of fabulous California native shrub, toyon. You can see in the wild, and we love to put these in landscapes. They're such a huge plant for habitat. That's the word I'm looking for. And birds love to eat the berries. So they're an amazing addition to any garden. Also coffeeberry, same benefits, habitat, good for pollinators, birds love the berries. California lilac, you're probably starting to see this sprout in the wild and in people's gardens, also known as ceanothus. Fabulous plant, that color is real, no filters on that, and they support native butterflies and bees, and they can just be buzzing with life. Our native trees, we have so many beautiful natives, but the oak is the big one I like to give a shout out to. One oak tree can support up to 4,000 different species. Not all of them we can see, plenty of them we can. They are so tremendous, so we don't advocate removing oak trees if at all possible, and being a steward of them if they are on your landscape property. Another native is the California buckeye. They're just starting to leaf out right now. So you might not recognize them yet, but they're starting to leaf out. And then later in the season, they'll have these big inflorescence of stalk full of beautiful flowers. Our native trees in the 0 to 5 foot zone, just a note. Now, Priscilla was talking about to get the certification from the insurance. They don't want trees anywhere near the house, so that's one thing to consider. But for what Resilient Landscapes Coalition promotes is that if they are there and established, not interfering with your structure, your foundation, keep your native trees close to structures as long as they're well maintained. So you do have to be getting on that roof, clearing the gutters, clearing the roof, making sure that the tree is healthy, and maybe doing some branch removal. Up to 6 feet of overhang over a roof is what is suggested, and within 10 feet if it's near a chimney. So just being vigilant with maintenance in fire season. One suggestion for replacing maybe a non-native plant you might have, or that seems to be everywhere sometimes, lavender, which is a beloved plant for many reasons. But if you want to go more native, an easy switch out is using this sage. It's called Cleveland sage. It also has a fragrance different than lavender, but it does present that same purple hue in the garden, and pollinators love to visit it. So resilient landscapes are also always maintained. You want to be sure that you are doing the right plant in the right place wherever you're planting, or if you're assessing the landscape you already have. And when we're doing maintenance, we want to make sure we're using clean tools so we don't spread pathogens or introduce pathogens to any established plants. Also leaving the leaf litter below plants like redwoods, oaks. This is a good thing. It's part of their natural cycle. It degrades and feeds the plants. And we don't promote the use of leaf blowers because we like to leave the litter near the tree, but also they're a noise nuisance, and they have some disadvantages. So we like to rake leaves if we need to move them around and keep them under trees. And we don't promote landscape fabric. Most of it's made of plastic. It can be a combination of plastic and other materials, and plastics don't biodegrade, they photodegrade, so in the sun, and they just turn into tinier and tinier pieces that are just impossible for us to get everything up. So instead we promote using cardboard or a heavy application of mulch to keep weeds down. Pruning is another big part of maintenance, and some of our California natives can take a really hard pruning. So this is coyote mint in the fall. We cut it way back in the winter, and here it is resprouting in spring, and come summer, you have a beautiful show of flowers. So keeping plants smaller, healthier, keeping them within where we intended them to go within reason. And then pruning is it's the one task in the garden to get really good at if you are putting in a native garden. Although we do provide maintenance services as well if you're not getting out there yourself. And other plants that can take this hard pruning are California fuchsia, coyote mint, yarrow, and hummingbird sage. We do want to avoid shearing plants. So that's coming in with like a bladed tool and just shearing off, a hedge or making these ball shapes. What happens is over time, the middle part dies back. So it might look good on the outside, but then you have all this dead, dense material inside that is a big fire hazard. So we don't like to shear our plants. Instead, you can do that hard pruning like I just showed with the coyote mint. And here we have some paths and swales that have been put in. So from a maintenance perspective, these are grasses that are in the 0 to 5. So come early summer, you want to make sure you are cutting these back, cut out these inflorescences, make sure they're low, that this is well hydrated, and that this material, you might need to replace some of that if it's been washed away. So just easy maintenance throughout the year. Here you might be replacing plants that have died or coming in and doing some kind of pruning. Another note about vegetation management for defensible space. The best time to do that is September through February. Because right now we're in March, and I know you're all seeing it. The birds are starting to be very active. They are building their nests and mating. So they're looking for their space to put their nest. So we want to make sure we do any heavy clearing before they get to that stage. So unfortunately, we're in that now. So being very careful, being mindful, you do see nests or bird activity, and also watch out for ground nesting birds. Just a couple more tips for successful habitat planting. We say it's a good thing to use a lot of different types of flowers. So some pollinators like to land on a type of flower that has a flat base. They need that extra area to land and eat. Some pollinators are not picky at all and they'll take any kind of flower head, but having a mix of flowers and a mix of type of flower is helpful. And also putting these in large groupings if you can, so there's enough to go around. And also considering bloom time when the different plants are flowering. So we can have blooms in January, and then we can have some blooms even through the summer, and then a whole new swath of plants start blooming come fall and into late winter. So considering those cycles, and even considering plants that provide nectar and pollen, because our pollinators need both. Okay, so thank you so much for your attention today. If you have questions we don't get to today, you can feel free to reach out to myself or April, the Executive Director of Habitat Corridor Project. And here again is who makes up the Resilient Landscapes Coalition. If you want to, our website is here. And we are just launching our spring workshop series. So in fact, we have one tomorrow night, free. It's at 5:30, and it's a longer version of what I just went through. So it talks more about the fire science, more about the ecology, and then I'll be doing the last part on the design again, but modified. It's also available in Spanish. And here are the 4 organizations' websites that make, and then other resources available. And that is all for today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Woohoo!
You're welcome.
Really appreciate all of your knowledge and wisdom. Wow, that's fantastic. You really know your plants. And it's such a relief to have such a positive perspective. That's why I wanted you here today, because I think people think of that moonscape, right? And they don't necessarily think about the fact that they can plant things that are really beautiful and still enjoy their garden and still be safe. So that was really helpful. Your workshop was in the newsletter that I sent out too, so that's another thing for our COPE leaders. They can just go ahead and send that out to their leaders and residents in their areas so that they know about that workshop. So thank you for that. Do people have questions for Jennifer, please? We've got the expert in the house, so. Randy.
Yeah, hi. Jennifer, you mentioned something about sequestering carbon in the soil. Can you explain that a little bit, what that is?
Yeah, sure. So we have found out that some plants, especially prairie plants that you find more in the Midwest, can have exceptionally long roots. And so they're actually doing a lot of work to draw down carbon from the air. So the carbon dioxide, they split it and they put it down as carbon into the soil. And even if those plants die and the roots die, that carbon can stay in the soil. And so how that's working here in California is that they are experimenting with pasture land. So there's been a lot of work done in Marin. There's the Marin Carbon Project. I think that's its name. And they are working with ranchers to test placing compost on their ranch lands, which increases the growth of the grasses, and then using like intermediate grazing. So not all the cows stay in one space, right? They move them along in a better schedule. The grasses are able to take carbon from the atmosphere and draw it down and store it. So when the cows come in and eat the grasses, part of the roots die because the top's dying, but the carbon stays down.
Cool, thank you. Arlene, I think I saw your hand up as well. No,
You're muted. She's
you're
muted.
muted, Arlene. You're still muted, my dear. Let me try to unmute you. No, it doesn't look like I can. Arlene, I'll turn, oh, there you are, there you are.
Yeah, okay, I just had to find it. Okay, one is broom. It's come back with a vengeance since the rain. We're pulling it out piece by piece. It's terribly expensive and it's very time consuming, and I'm not going to use any poison. Do you have any idea about that? And the second question is mulch. You know, we're not supposed to use the ground up stuff, and we have a lot of mulch because we're always chipping when we cut wood. But, and we have gravel for the most part, or small rock. Is there anything else if you can't use mulch and rock?
Okay, I'll start with the broom question. If you're not willing to use poison, and I fully support that, you're doing it exactly right. By hand. I know, and it's terribly hard work, time consuming and very expensive. So when the meeting started out with the broom removal groups, and I've seen advertisements on social media, I mean, I'm like, my heart goes out to you guys for doing that.
Okay,
Very hard, but very important work.
yes, it is. It's
Yeah.
a meditation.
There you go.
Yes,
That's
okay.
how you have to treat it.
Yeah.
And then as far as mulch, that is a whole conversation unto itself. It's a fun one. So I've talked a lot about the gravel mulch or rock mulch today. You can use arbor mulch in the 5 foot to 30 foot zone. That
Okay.
is absolutely allowed. So just not in the 0 to 5 foot. And I love arbor mulch. We love arbor mulch in our design practice for its numerous benefits, but not all mulch is created equal. So we say, do not use that gorilla hair mulch, that stringy kind. It almost looks like, it can look like coconut fiber at times.
No,
We do
right.
not promote that. That really, when embers are flying, it easily ignites.
Right.
What we do promote is composted arbor mulch. So arbor mulch that is not super fine, not super large, somewhere in the middle, and that has been composted. And there is still studies being done about for how long, at what temperature, what does this mean? So it can get, it's a whole other world that can get, there's a lot of talk still being going on about it. But if you get arbor mulch, say from a free chipper program, and let it sit, 6 months is a great rule of thumb before using it, especially in areas closer to structures, then that's what we promote.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions?
Someone in the chat says, please don't use rubber mulch. Yes.
Oh, dear.
And also, we shy away from those dyed mulches, like the black mulch, or, you know, that have obviously been heavily dyed, because though that color leaches out into the water system.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They
Is-
also making mulch from chipped pallets.
Okay.
Also probably not good stuff.
Yeah, there's potential for glue contamination, and then also that wood that they're using is some of the lowest grade wood. So not always the best choice if you can avoid that.
Hmm.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, I know that Pat Abercrombie and I have a lot to think about as a result of that great presentation, and lots of ideas. My mind is just going crazy, thinking about how to fill that space that we've got now. So thank you for that, Jennifer. And again, just want to promote their workshop coming up tomorrow. If you can get that word out to your community, I sent the flyer out to you all, so let them know that's happening. And I think, Jennifer, the link to the registration for that was not on the flyer. So I've been sending people to the Resilient Landscapes Coalition website, because under events, you can register there.
You got it. That's exactly where. And also we're having a workshop that's just on maintenance. I'll be doing that one. It's on April 9th at 5:30. It's also free. So we'll talk more about pruning, a lot more about mulch, composting. There's a couple other things like mowing and such. So come to that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Jennifer, you can hang around if you want. Otherwise, I totally understand that you're a busy gal. So if you need to go, feel free. And many, many thanks to you for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I think I'm gonna head
Sure.
out. Gotta get ready for my next presentation tomorrow. So
There you
thank
go.
Bye.
Thanks, Jennifer. Take good care.
bye.
All right. I
Hey,
think the chief was going to talk a little bit about inspections and a couple of other tidbits that we thought you would be interested in. Excuse me. I'm also willing to talk more about the home hardening piece of the work that we're doing, just to give you an idea of what next steps people might be wanting to do around that. So Marshall, did you have?
Yeah, it's almost a good segue. Everything she just talked about is information you'll probably never get from the average firefighter. So it's all good stuff, but remember, firefighters do inspections, not assessments. So what firefighters do is enforce for the law and what the law says. So the law will say people need to have defensible space. But then you'll ask a firefighter, well, what should I do for defensible space? And they'll be like, prune stuff, separate stuff. And so they're not looking at a holistic approach about ecosystem services, preventing runoff, preventing erosion. Probably firefighters think rubber mulch is okay as well. So that is much more valuable information about tactically how to get things done. So that's just highlights the difference in what's called an inspection versus an assessment. So for the inspections, we got building construction and we got defensible space. And building construction is very important. That's what you heard Priscilla talk about, retrofitting an existing structure, and it's enforced for new structures. But it's costly, and it tends to be folks don't want to do it for a number of reasons. And then fire departments are not out there requiring it unless it is new construction. So firefighters in general are not well versed on providing that type of assessment or advice, and definitely don't inspect for it. So all the good information about gutters and decking and that siding, it's all good stuff, but you're not going to get that from a firefighter inspection. And then on the defensible space, which you just heard about, you're not going to get that from a firefighter either. It's going to be, do you have the 0 to 5 feet, which is soon going to become law? Do you have then the 5 to 30? And then there's some differences like overhanging trees. The law doesn't require you to take trees down, but it may with the 0 to 5, but the insurance companies, it's weird to say require, but there's no law they're enforcing. They're just saying, we're not going to insure you, or we're going to charge you X dollars if you don't take the tree down. So that's what gets really tricky. So remember, there's inspections. That's what the law says. That's what government enforces for. And then there's assessments, which is really a lot of valuable information. And the SoCo adapts and Ivan, Andranis, the folks that provide that information, some of the recordings we've done before are really good about that. So that I'd encourage everyone to do the assessment. And then just remember, it is a balance between structural ignitability, structural hardening, and landscaping. Every situation is different. For the folks that maybe live in Coffee Park or really close to another house, it's, in my opinion, much more important how your house is built. But if you're surrounded by a lot of vegetation, then it's almost just as important how you manage your vegetation. And we're, as firefighters, just from experience, it's all about heat bombardment on the exterior of your house and then embers. If you can combat those two main things, from what I've seen, not in laboratory conditions, that'll help your house survive and keep you safe if you happen to be there. So that's hopefully clarifies assessments versus inspections. And I can stop for some questions there. And I was going to talk about burn permits real quick because we're in the burn season a little bit right now. Yeah.
Marshall, so the other is, so for COPE leaders, it's kind of a little bit, can you give us a little bit of info on SRA versus LRA and who does inspections and what that might look like for who they're going to see in their neighborhoods potentially this spring?
Yeah. And there's going to be some confusion right now. I don't know if any of you or some people in your communities may have gotten letters from Permit Sonoma announcing inspections. So Permit Sonoma in the last 7 days, we're getting quite a bit of phone calls, sent out a postcard of what's going to be inspected for the county ordinance called Chapter 13A, and that's applicable to undeveloped parcels with no house on them, as well as developed parcels. So that's causing quite a bit of questions right now. So to take it from the very top, wildland jurisdiction, there's two types: SRA, which is state responsibility area, and LRA, local responsibility area. There's technically a third called federal responsibility area, but no one lives in a national park or on Army Corps land, so we don't normally talk about FRA. In general, state responsibility area is the mountainous terrain that has watershed or forest value. So it's automatically nothing inside a city, because as soon as the city incorporates, such as Fountain Grove, it automatically becomes LRA, local responsibility. So LRA can be inside a city, and it also could be unincorporated Sonoma County that's not in the mountains. So in general, the Alexander Valley floor, the Dry Creek Valley floor, parts of Chalk Hill area are local responsibility area. The Russian River Valley are local responsibility area. Knights Valley is a weird situation because Knights Valley as a valley is all technically SRA, but in general, it's usually the flatlands are LRA. There's different laws, which is kind of frustrates me sometimes, because if you talk about someone speeding down the road freeway, there's one state law, everyone enforces one law regardless of what agency. The fire service can't get that figured out. So there's a state law called Public Resources Code 4291 that's applicable in state responsibility area, but only for developed parcels. So it's only around structures. So if you're in the mountains, Geysers Road, Pine Mountain Road, Stewart's Point, Skag Springs, Fitch Mountain, outside the city of Hillsburg, the state law Public Resources Code 4291 applies. The issue is it's not well enforced, or not necessarily enforced, but if you have violations, it's rare that anybody gets a citation, a fine, gets arrested, gets abated, meaning government comes in and cuts stuff down and then puts a lien on your property. That rarely happens at the state level. So the county of Sonoma specifically, about 4 years ago, passed what was called Chapter 13A. So 13A, the way the county wrote it, it's anything in unincorporated Sonoma County. So it's confusing. It overlaps with state responsibility area, because if you live in state responsibility area, you're also in unincorporated Sonoma County. So 13A also applies to undeveloped parcels, which is different than what the state law is. And 13A has some nuances in the language about cutting grass to 4 to 6 inches. I think it says 6 inches. The state law just says keep the grass low or cut it back. It doesn't say exact parameters. And 13A is more likely to be enforced by the county of Sonoma, putting a lien on your property, billing you. And that's what people are mostly reading in these postcards that are going out, is how if you don't comply, the county is going to put a lien on your property. So those are some of the nuances between state responsibility law and the county of Sonoma law. And then it gets tricky about what agency is inspecting, enforcing. It's CAL FIRE is only going to work in state responsibility area. CAL FIRE is only going to use the state law. The fire districts are going to work in unincorporated Sonoma County. They're going to use Chapter 13A because the county of Sonoma is providing funding to the local districts to enforce Chapter 13A or do the inspections for Chapter 13A. After 2 or 3 inspections, that 13A inspection gets turned over to the county of Sonoma to determine what the county of Sonoma wants to do. If they do want to do abatement where they do the work and then put a lien on a property, or if they want to go after other enforcement action. Some of this, there's some history here on Fitch Mountain about that, but it's up to the county how they want to pursue that. And then just realize, for the few of you that may live in a city, such as the city of Hillsburg, city of Cloverdale, city of Santa Rosa as well, they have a whole different law, and they've been doing abating, specifically city of Hillsburg, for many years of doing abating, where they'll come in and mow, do work, and then put a lien on properties. So really tricky. You got the inspection versus the assessment, and then you got SRA, LRA, and then different agencies doing enforcement. And then to throw in there with the SoCo Adapts program is now the county of Sonoma has a grant to help you with assessments, which is not the law. And that's a whole nother, where it gets confusing. So about the only thing that'll make you feel better is the burn permitting process is even more confusing. If that makes you feel any better. So, yeah. So, thank.
Marshall, can I
Did
ask you
you
a quick
want to
question?
talk?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Marshall, the issue that we have is part of our property is boundaried. It has a boundary of a PUC. I don't know who to, sorry. The grasses and the brush on this public utility thing that comes from March Avenue down the side of the property onto, the north part of our property in Scenic Lane. No one ever, I don't know who to get to take care of that.
Yeah, it would, someone's got to own the parcel. I don't think there's any PUC, meaning Public Utilities Commission.
Yeah.
I don't think they own the parcel. They may have a right of way, but they're not the landowner. So there's got to be a landowner there at some point. And good or bad, if you guys want to take the time to read Chapter 13A, if you own a lot of property, it could be really daunting about how they defined a dead vegetation, because that could be you have to cut down every dead tree. If you have a small parcel, it could be daunting as well with some of the requirements, such as you need to maintain your vegetation if it's within 100 feet of your neighbor's property or along a shared road. So that's where it gets tricky about size of the parcel, who owns it, SRA, LRA, what laws being enforced. That's why I've always been a fan of just get to know your neighbor, get along with your neighbor. Everybody helps each other out, because it's a much better kind of model than getting government involved and trying to get neighbors to cooperate or enforcing laws, because it automatically goes to kind of a dark spot really quickly, versus neighbor helping neighbors whenever possible. So.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Priscilla. Sorry about that.
No, sure. Marshall, did you want to talk about burn permits? Is that
yeah, I was just going to bring it up that this is right now, especially this week, between we have a gap in the weather, that more and more people are burning, including some small broadcast burning. And as a reminder, Pulse Point is a good spot to go, because anybody who registers has to register with Redcom, and then Redcom will put it in the Pulse Point app. However, there's a couple little drawbacks. If the dispatchers are really busy, then someone leaves a voicemail, and so it may not get put on Pulse Point until someone listens to the voicemail. And then the other issue with Pulse Point is it only can display so many incidents at one time. So right now it's not too bad, because burn hours start at 10 a.m. But once burn hours start at 6 a.m., which will happen on May 1st, might be April, that's May 1st. You might not, but if it's 9 o'clock and you see smoke, there's going to be so many other incidents, you're not going to be able to see that prescribed burn, because it's not in the top 50 or top whatever calls. So that's what's tricky about Pulse Point, but it's always a good tool to go to. And then it's getting pretty much standardized, not any law. It's good guidance. Most of the burn bosses are also notifying watch duty. And so watch duty, you'll put an icon on the map. And remember, there's a free version of watch duty and a paid version of watch duty, but the free version has this where it'll be on the map, and that'll stay there. It won't go away. Watch duty is now also pulling data from what's called PFERs. So in order to burn more than 3 acres to do a prescribed burn, some people are also doing PFERs for pile burning. That's a reporting system to get your smoke management plan. Bunch of extra information you don't want to know. But if someone goes to burn a bunch of stuff like vineyard replacement or do a broadcast burn or significant pile burn, it most likely will get put into PFERs, and then Watch Duty pulls data from PFERS as well. So Watch Duty is just, letting you guys know it's a good app to look at. And then Pulse Point's another good one to reference. So bottom line, if you guys see smoke, smell smoke, or concerned about a fire, call 911. But if you have time to do some research or check stuff out, you might be able to find it on Pulse Point or Watch Duty. And then maybe another tool in your toolbox is going to the Alert California cameras. Generally, if it's a wildfire, there'll be a camera pointed at it because someone's monitoring it in dispatcher in the office. If it's a prescribed burn that is causing concern, most likely a camera is going to be pointed at it as well. If it's a wildfire, it may not be known about yet. So that's why I'm always err on the side of caution. Call 911, call and report it. So, and then the permitting process, I don't know how many people are looking to burn, but just as a recap, year round, you need an air quality permit. Most everyone here, I think everybody here is in Northern Sonoma County Air Pollution Control District. So that's all done online now. And then not till May 1st. So after May 1st, you'll need a CAL FIRE permit. So right now it's strictly just an air quality permit. So that's why CAL FIRE and the fire departments may not know where everyone's burning because fire departments are not issuing permits. May 1st on, CAL FIRE permits required, fire department permits required. Some point, probably not until late June, maybe July 1st, there'll be that burn permit suspension. So normal dooryard, small piles, permits will no longer be issued to those folks. Your air quality permit is no longer valid because there's a burn permit suspension. However, agricultural prescribed burns can still occur during the summer. They're exempt from the permit. They still got to get permitted, but they're exempt from the permit suspension. So I kind of keep it simple, but it is a lot more complicated. And there is some references online too, or you guys can give me a call if you guys get stuck in a bind, or you get the firefighter or someone that's not as familiar with the permitting requirements because it can be tricky.
So oftentimes this time of year, we start to hear on GroupMe, people concerned about seeing smoke or whatever. I just want to remind you of, the resources that the chief just talked about. So please use Watch TV, please look at Redcom. And if you're concerned, certainly do 911. If you need to post on GroupMe at that point, because you can't figure out what's going on, then feel free to do that. But you just want to reinforce that we want to be careful with the use of GroupMe because some of us are getting GroupMe fatigue and won't pay attention anymore. And the purpose of GroupMe is to really help people stay informed and be able to respond if there's something urgent.
Yeah, and another thing that's worked out well too is if you let your neighbors know you're burning, or if you know about a burn, maybe put that out in an email, especially if it's going to be a long-term overnight burn, multiple day burn. That could help people out too. So.
Great, thank you for that. All right, any other questions, you guys? We have a few minutes. We don't oftentimes have time to just ask questions and exchange ideas, those kinds of things. And we just have a couple of minutes left. So I just want to open it up to any questions people might have.
Priscilla, it's Alan Orick.
Hi, Alan Orick.
Hi. Sorry, my screen is defunct, but I'm here. So
good. We're glad you're here.
I wanted to
like
offer
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah,
there
right,
you go.
There you go. Thank you. I'll take it. On the GroupMe comment, just to the community, we use it very successfully in our neighborhood, but we are very much adhered to it's for emergencies only. So the moment somebody tries to engage that app as a general communication, we shut that down right away so that it holds true for the emergencies and the either evacuations or mudslides, etc. And that's been successful for us, just as a recommendation.
Great, thank you for that, Alan. I really appreciate it. I have to admit that I feel like we struggle on Fitch Mountain a bit with it. Just some different ideas about how it should be used. And I think it's true that different communities will have different ways of using GroupMe, and that's okay too. But everybody needs to understand what it's being used for. Yeah, Rhonda.
Am I unmuted there? Hi. I'm one of those people on Fitch Mountain, and we came up with a unique idea. We wanted to use GroupMe. We made a chatting place for our neighbors about important things, but things that didn't rise to the level of emergency. And we're just trying it out, testing it out. And so far, I think it's going to work out for us. Just an idea. Thanks, Priscilla.
Yeah, thank you. That'll be nice for those of us with GroupMe fatigue. Mr. Abercrombie?
Rhonda, did you figure out in that process how to customize a tone or mute a certain group? The problem with GroupMe is it's got this tone when a message hits that is, I think, universal across all of your GroupMe chats. So it doesn't really matter if it's, the grapevine tone going off or if it's an emergency tone going off, as far as whether you grab your phone to see what's going on. So it looks like you didn't.
That's a great comment. And I know I just see the icon, and we changed the icon significantly so that we could identify it. I'll talk to Clay about that, see where we're at. Okay.
You bet. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Great, thank you for that. As you all know, and probably have this experience, when GroupMe goes off, I jump, right? Because I'm like, what's up? What do I need to respond to? So just from going through the fires and all of that, for me, it's urgent. It's something I need to pay attention to. I have 3 GroupMes because, I'm on the leadership GroupMe, I'm on the Fitch Mountain, GroupMe, and I have a GroupMe for my neighborhood that I'm in charge of. So a lot of us have all these different groups that we're a part of, and you can't tell which one's going off. So if we can, figure that out, it would be really helpful, I think, and probably less stressful. Yeah.
May I make one counter to you, Pat? When you do Fern, are you telling me that everyone who gets GroupMes gets a ding for Fern?
No, it's anyone. No, it's just
Okay.
Priscilla's got 3 GroupMes. I have 7.
I've got. Okay, so we'll chat. I'll chat with you offline then, because I'm thinking it's just if you're in that list. Okay, thank you.
It is. It is.
Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, so next month, this is really important. We are blessed to have Fire Safe Sonoma doing Firewise. They have money and people, Marika, to help us set up Firewise in our communities. How many people here on this call today are interested in setting up a Firewise in their community? Anybody? I'm seeing Susan Gansel. Randy, was that a yes on you?
We're Patea and I are attending the seminar in Roanoke Park next week, and so I assume we'll find out a lot more about that when we do the workshops. So
yes, great. And I know some of us are already Firewise, but what I wanted to share about that is that the next meeting, my goal is it'll be our in-person meeting in April. People will be able to sit down and start their application process and really have some tangible information that will help you move forward with it. Not just talking about it, but actually, understanding next steps, get ideas about what kind of volunteer hours you can use, how to calculate those, what your goals might be in your action plan, just really help you with tangible things to help you move forward with getting that application done. So it'd be great if you're going to the Leadership Summit to learn about Firewise. And then I think you'll be really primed to be able to actually start filling stuff out. So, and more to come on that. Marika and I are meeting with Diane, and Marika and I are meeting to really talk about that and try to move it forward ahead of the meeting. So we may ask those of you that are interested in being Firewise to let us know that ahead of time. And we'll start that process and help prime the pump so that when we get together, we're really getting that application completed. And for those of you that are already Firewise, I'm not sure if we'll have information or not about the second phase of, okay, so now it's time to renew your Firewise. What is it that you need to do? But I know that that's covered at the summit as well. So. All right, and I'm happy. Were you guys interested in the home hardening and defensible space stuff we're doing, or is it just kind of boring? Was it helpful? Okay, because I don't want to, you know, I just want to share with you because I'm finding that there are lots of ins and outs of it and things that we're struggling with trying to figure out in doing this. And I wanted to share it with you in hopes that maybe that would help you in your process as well. So maybe the next time that we're online, I can do a little bit more of where we're at with the home hardening piece of it. So, all right, and we'll have more progress, we hope, by then. All right, thank you all. Happy St. Patty's Day and happy Easter for those of you that celebrate, and all the other holidays coming up this month. There's a bunch. And the birthday boy, we had a couple of birthdays. Diane and Pat just had birthdays. So happy birthday to the birthday people. All right. Thank you so much for being here. We're so glad you're doing the work that you're doing because it's really important. So take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.